I'm doing today is starting on the shock mounts on the 33 project. In addition to the shock mount, I have incorporated a headlight mount. This is what the shock mount normally mounts to, various styles and sizes. And this is actually a piece that you can purchase. It's stainless steel, but I did a considerable amount of machine work on it to where it mounts with the shock mount and it's flush and whatnot. But anyway, the point is that the shock mount not only will control the location of the shock, obviously, but it'll also control the location of the headlight as it pertains to the height of the headlight, front to back, all that stuff. So you want to get a good position on your headlight so it looks good. If it's too high or too low, it doesn't look very good. So typically there are bosses that come with the shock mounts. Shock mount normally mounts to the frame right about here, and they give you little threaded bungs that you can weld to your frame, which was on here before. I recently cut them off. One of the reasons for that is if you have a mild steel boss, and you know, a lot of it just depends on how much of a stickler for details you are, but typically on a boss, once this is welded to the frame, later you get the frame painted, the boss, the whole thing is covered in paint. And then when you take a steel piece and you go to bolt to it, the pressure from torquing that steel piece against your boss will crack the paint. And obviously once the integrity of the paint, when it's cracked, well, that sounds stupid, didn't it? Once the integrity of the paint is compromised, then you'll start getting corrosion, and eventually you'll get rust in there and the paint will start chipping off. A trick that I used to use on motorcycles when I built bikes years ago is to make your bosses out of stainless steel. Now what I can do, after this is welded in, I can paint the sides of the boss right up to the face there and mask it right there so we don't get any paint on the face. And because this is stainless, obviously this bare metal will be exposed, but it won't rust. And then when I bolt the shock mount to it, I don't have the paint cracking, obviously, and it just makes for a nice, much cleaner fit. So I used a hole saw and manually drilled one of the first holes for the shock mount. And obviously I'll drill my second one later on. That fits in the frame like that, and then this will bolt right over the top of it. So kind of a good idea to do those in stainless if you can. And I just took some solid bar, the right diameter. I drilled it. I did the work on a lathe, but going along with the theme of this project, it can easily be done with a hand drill or on a small drill press, and then just run a tap through it for your threads. As I mentioned before, part of the issue with mounting these shocks, especially when you're going to integrate the headlights with it, is the location of the headlight. I've seen several, especially 33s, 34s in the past, beautiful cars, and sometimes guys just don't get, in my opinion, the headlight located in just the right spot where it looks good. You don't want it to stick out way beyond the grill. You don't want it to be too far behind. Don't want it too high. Don't want it too low. So in order to find my location for my shock mount, which again is also my headlight mount, I wanted to have the grill mounted for a reference. So when I get it nailed down, I can physically put it up there, look at the headlight, make sure it's not bumping up against the grill. There's also obviously a hood panel here that needs to swing out and rise up to a certain degree, so I need clearance for all that. My problem was that about the only thing that the grill bolts to until the car is finished, obviously, is these inner fender panels. And the next problem was that these inner fender panels interfered with where my shock mount goes, because the top mount is going to be right around in here on top of that, and that would have gotten in the way. So what I did, in order to have my grill in place without having these in place, I mocked it all together with both side panels. I bolted it all up. And then on the top here, these are just some old metal shelf brackets. And I got a piece of tubing down there. With it all in place, I just kind of tack welded some braces to hold the grill in place. And then I was able to remove my inner fender panels. And my grill is right where I need it. So as I mentioned before, here's the shock mount that bolts to the frame, the shock itself, the bracket for the headlight, and the headlight when they're all bolted together. They look a little something like this. This needs to be bolted to the frame and the headlight position from front to back and top and bottom. So it took quite a while, but I mocked a lot of different things up to get my hole locations for the shock mount to make sure that they were set correctly for the travel of the shock itself, firstly, and then secondly for the location of the headlight. I've established my first hole here. I'll bolt the assembly up to it, get the bracket to where it is directing the headlight close to where it needs to be, and we'll be good to go. Part of the design or decision-making process of setting this up, again, speaking to the difficulty of the headlight combination shock mount, there are a few options available on the market. This is a shock mount. It's aftermarket, but it's actually an almost direct copy of a shock mount for a F100 pickup truck. I'm not sure what years, but there's several vendors that sell these. They are, this particular one is chrome plated steel. This you would use if you needed a taller shock mount. Quite frankly, I had some difficulty when I first started this and wasn't sure what would work. So in addition to purchasing these shock mounts, which I thought was going to be closest to what I needed, a friend of mine loaned me his short mounts. This is the same thing. It's got the shock attached to it, obviously, but you can see where one's taller than the other one. This is a shorter mount. The nice thing about this one is it's solid stainless steel. When I get to the fine tuning of this bracket, again, to address the shock location and headlight, this piece isn't perfect, and I'm going to have to heat it with a torch and bend it and get it dialed in right where I wanted it. Nice thing, fortunately, as things turned out, I need the shorter one, which is a stainless steel one, so I don't have to, with a chrome one, once you got this thing cherry red and start bending it around and moving it, the chrome would literally start falling off of it and flaking it off. And once you're done, you would have to send it back out to the chrome shop, have it stripped, have it rebuffed and replated. Nice thing about this stainless steel one, I'll heat it with a torch, get it right where I want to, and then afterwards all I have to do is take a buffing wheel and get it all shiny, because obviously it'll have black and soot and be a little bit discolored on the surface. Again, it'll mount in there, get the shock on. I'll get into the lower shock mount. Some people might say that this appears to be pretty simple, trying to control just these few things, but another situation that I had was the lower shock mount, and I'll get into that one later on.